On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to dive into your mailbag questions. Should the Thunder move up in the draft? Should they trade for a proven star? And can SGA keep up this level of play? What's the philosophy for the OKC Thunder in this draft? We'll talk about all of that coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com. Rylan Styles, you can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. You can even text the show now for behind-the-scenes content, a direct line to the show, what's to come on the show, exclusive mailbags, and everything else that you want over there at Subtext by texting 405-939-2621, 405-939-2621. Text Thunder and you'll get subscribed to the show on Subtext. We're going to dive into your mailbag questions on today's show, talking about which prospects fit the Thunder. Should the Thunder trade up in the draft? Should they trade for a proven guy? Everything under the sun that you want to know about, we're going to talk about on today's Mailbag Monday podcast. As long as you guys have questions, we will continue to do this every single Monday throughout the offseason. So make sure that you drop your questions on Twitter, on YouTube comment sections, wherever you want to reach. Go over there and drop your questions. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Folks, PrizePicks is awesome because first-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the code LOCKEDON at PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app with the code LOCKEDON. So let's start with your questions about the Thunder and what to do in the offseason. The question that's going to come up a lot in this podcast is what prospects fit the Thunder at 12? Should the Thunder trade up for X prospect? Who should the Thunder be looking at? Those type of questions are naturally on the mind as we sit a few weeks out from the NBA draft lottery, as we sit here, a couple months out from the NBA draft. And with that, I think it's an interesting Pandora's box opening moment to a conversation about what the Thunder's draft philosophy should be. Now, Sam Presti was asked about, what a Thunder guy is, and he mentioned how, that term is self-righteous, and there's no such thing as like a Thunder guy besides, they look for a good person, look for a resilient person, but like, they don't want to act like they have a certain type, or however you want to put it. Self-righteous is how Sam Presti put it. But they do have like patterns. They do have patterns in who they select. They look for these lengthy players who can defend all five positions and switch and who can have great feel for the game, who can be playmakers, and they look for players of that caliber. And they've done that throughout these last couple of years, and they've been telling us since the trades went down initially of Paul George and Russell Westbrook. Since that went down initially, they've been telling us how they were going to play positionless basketball. Everybody's a playmaker, push the pace, and do all these different things. And this draft, based upon who's in the draft, and based upon we are likely going to see the pick fall at 12, there is not a perfect embodiment of those patterns. And there comes a point where you would sacrifice talent level for the sake of pattern level. And you'd much rather have a more talented player you're going to try to teach to play your way than a less talented player who can do more of the things that fall into your pattern, in my opinion. And so it's going to be an interesting decision of like, do you try to just find the guy that fits perfectly? And I think that the name that people are going to come back to throughout this process is a Ryan Repair, of a guy that like fits the Thunder mold. But that's the only guy that like people think fits the Thunder mold perfectly. Every other name that you put out there, You could make an argument against guys that I like, Grady Dick. You make an argument against guys that I like Jarris Walker, like Taylor Hendricks. Like, you can make an argument against those guys being non-Thunder guys. Like, for Hendricks, pretty easy of like the low-level playmaking that he has. Grady Dick is not a high-level defender, and I think that he has the athletic ability that's a bit underrated for Grady Dick, and I also think that he has the potential to be a good defender in the NBA, especially as you surround him with other great defenders, to kind of lessen the load on him. I think that he's that potential, but again, not a great Thunder guy, even though I think that he gets, not enough credit for how much he fits the Thunder mold. But nonetheless, you're not going to find that perfect fit this year. Like, there's not going to be that guy that I think that you can just circle and say that's who Sam Presti's going to target. That's who the Thunder should target. And so, even more than most seasons, it's just simply guessing of like who the Thunder might like. And if we only come up with one name of who the Thunder might like and fits and checks all the boxes, that one name could be gone by pick 12. And probably won't be, but could be. So, what would you rather do? Would you rather lean all into a guy who can help you right away, who can fit your patterns right away, or would you rather lean into a guy who does one thing that you need really, really well? Like, let's say shooting. Like, the Thunder need to shoot better, especially around SGA. We saw what Isaiah Joe could do as a guy that came in and helped the team shoot the ball better. Do you lean into a guy that can do that really, really well, but does X, Y, and Z poorly? Like, how do you adjust? Because as of right now, I don't think that there's a perfect Thunder guy. And there's still a few months away, and that's Sam Presti's job to figure out the perfect quote-unquote Thunder guy. But the simple patterns that we fell into over the last few draft cycles, I don't think that there's a guy that fits all of those things, and that's okay. Like, it might be time to say, well, we got enough of these guys that can like play make and that can switch and that can do this and that. We need other guys that can do X, Y, and Z. I think that that's a little bit of where the Thunder are at. Not to totally disband any of that. You need someone that can be a passable and reliable playmaker in the sense of the ball doesn't stick to them. You cannot have a ball stopper at all, period. So keeps the offense in rhythm is a must. But does he need to be a high-end playmaker? You could argue no, because they have so many of those guys already. Just be a passable guy that does not have the ball stick to him and keeps everything in rhythm and keeps everything in motion and can, and if needed to, can facilitate a fast break if it so bounces that way, but in all likelihood will not be tasked with that a lot. I think that you can shift what the Thunder are going to look for a little bit. Because at some point you've got to fill the needs of your roster. Instead of, the desire of a specific mold of a player. And so it's a difficult balancing act of, are they at that point yet? Or are you still trying to continue to fill out this roster with guys who you think can play your designated style? And the problem is, there's not many guys that jump off the page that can check off all of those boxes that you want. Like, if they're a good playmaker, they miss out on the switchable defense. If they have the switchable defense, they miss out on the feel for the game. If they have the shooting, they miss out. Like, there's no perfect player. So how do you adjust to that? How do you flip that switch off? And so it's always a guess in the draft process, but as we open up this week where we're going to dive into draft profile and projections, we're going to dive into mock draft, tankathon spins. We'll talk to Mavs draft Richard Stamen again on this week's show. As we do more of this draft content from now until the draft, it's important to note that like this idea of a Thunder prospect, I don't think is out there. I think that there's too many players who have too many one dominant trait and not enough like well-rounded traits that fit what they've been looking for previously. But there's still really good players in this draft. And there's still players who can help this Thunder team a lot, both next year and especially in years beyond next year. And we'll see how the draft process goes. Like draft workouts are about to start. They'll have the combine. They'll have, in-person interviews and workouts, and we'll get to talk to these prospects. So we're a long ways left to go. But it's an interesting philosophy of when do you switch from we're drafting a specific brand of player to we're drafting to fill needs. And I don't think that filling needs is short-sighted. I think that you can get a guy like Grady Dick. Does he fill a need? Shooting, yes. But he also has upside as a defender. He also has really good feel for the game. He also does other things really well. So that's not short-sighted, even though in the short term, it does help your team. It's going to be a fun balancing act to see how all of this is pulled off. We'll talk about the draft and your questions coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at PrizePicks, folks. PrizePicks is awesome. PrizePicks is where you want to go with our good friends over at PrizePicks, because it's a great outlet for you to enjoy games. You can sit back and watch the playoffs tonight and download the PrizePicks app. Go to PrizePicks.com, enter the promo code LOCKEDON, get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100, and you just sit back and relax. It's just you versus the projected numbers. And what you can do is say, well, I think that Russell Westbrook will have more than 25.5 points. And you sit back, you watch. If he scores 26, boom, you win. If he scores less than 26, you obviously lose. So, less than 25, you obviously lose. So, it's great and a great tool for you to use. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can even do this cross-sport. You can get an NBA player, an MLB player, and just see how it all goes, and win 25 times your money on any entry by going to PrizePicks right now. Go to PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON, PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON, and you get 100% deposit match up to $100, PrizePicks.com/LOCKEDON. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast. On the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. What a great time that this is for the offseason. Everything's still ahead of you. Technically, literally everything's still ahead of you. I know it's a slim chance, but technically speaking, it is not outside of the realm of possibility that the Thunder get Victor or Scoot or whoever at the top of the draft that you love. So everything's in front of you. Free agency, trades, summer league, all that fun stuff. So it's a great time. It's a great time. It's also a great time to name our Nissan Player of the Week. Our Nissan Player of the Week is going to go to our good pal, Russell Westbrook. Because Russell Westbrook is great and is playing great. And although the Clippers are down now 3-1, he is playing electric, just like the great electric car Nissan Aria. It is the Nissan Aria's most electric player of the game, brought to you by Nissan Aria. The 2023 Nissan Aria is great. It's electric. It's brilliantly fierce. It's fiercely elegant. It's stunningly powerful. And it's awesome. So make sure you check it out today because the 2023 Nissan Aria packs a pin-you-to-your-seat punch with premium and intelligence, and it's all in one EV. It's the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Let's start with the mailbag questions at Money Mike Cooper. What do you think of the Thunder to trade down from their pick at 12 and to trade down their 12th pick and a heavy protected first, or a couple seconds to Brooklyn for their 2 picks? A couple guys that I like is Ryan Repair and Chris Murray, the twin brother of Keegan. Trading down is definitely an option. I think that quite literally everything is an option in this draft. And that's not like a Sam Prestiism, but genuinely, I would not be stunned to see them trade back. Like remember last year, like 2 weeks from this point, or I guess technically 4 weeks from this point because the lottery hadn't happened yet. After the lottery, the Thunder jumped to 2, and then there was that random Kings guy that said like the Kings are in serious talks and have a deal in framework with the Thunder for pick 2 because the Thunder love Jaden Ivey. That would have been an absolute stunner. There's no way that was going to happen. The Thunder had Chet circled as their guy pre-lottery, post-lottery, every step of the way. Chet was their guy. And so that would have just never happened. And so that would have been a no, that can't happen. They're only going to ever do X, Y, or Z. This time around, if they're at 12 after the lottery and don't get absurd luck, if they're at 12 after the lottery, they could move up, they could move down, they could stay put. Like there's nothing that would stun me. It'd be interesting you'd be bringing in at that point, 2 players instead of 1. Trading a couple of seconds, it'd depend when the seconds were. Like, technically speaking, if you just straight up did this as like, I'll give you 12, you give me 2 picks later on, that would be 4 picks coming up for this year that you have to make room for, with only 1 impending free agent. That'd be picks 21 and 22. I don't foresee that happening for like that specific package, but trading back, I think, would be a wise move, and you can kind of kick the can down the road a little bit. There's already not a guy that you're probably going to be totally in love with in terms of like checking all of your boxes at 12, but also trading up would be interesting. I know that Sam Presti wants to see how these 2024 first round picks go, and that's also, that's very true. But as we saw, things change. Like Sam Presti also said last year that they were going to accept Dort's player option, team option, and then they declined it and re-signed him to a big deal. So like, we've seen how this stuff goes. That can change very fluidly. Like, that's the answer, last week, but we're 3 months away from the decision being made. So like, I could see them moving up, I could see them moving back, and I could just see them simply having a less involved draft where they're just picking at 12 and go about their way in the first round. So anything's on the table. I do like Chris Murray a lot. I think that I'm a tad higher on him than most people are. I'll give you my big board at some point next week, so to stay tuned for that as a little horizontal tease for you everydayers who are going to come back every single day. And we thank you a lot. So subscribe across all podcasting platforms so you never miss an episode. But I do like Repair. At MN Renegado, discuss the possibility for Shai to have a similar stat year in the next season. Is he expecting that since he's hitting his peak age? Yeah, I don't see a regression coming. Everything that Shai did this year was repeatable. You're going to add in Chet, and you're going to add in guys. Jacob's going to need more shots, and hopefully Giddey's is a guy that gets more shots as well. Comfortable shooting the ball more in year 3. But everything that he did was repeatable, and if anything, it allows him to be more comfortable on the offensive end because he'll have better spacing with just adding Chet, much less if you add anyone else crazy in the draft that can shoot. Like, adding Chet is just immediately more spacing. And so, like, that'll be great too. So, like, yeah, I think that SGA will be repeatable in what he did this season. At Funky Sooner, as the roster fills out and the Thunder are more competitive, does that increase the likelihood of using draft and stash philosophy? And is James Nagy a potential for that? I don't think that James Nagy is a potential draft and stash guy. Like, we'll learn more about him later on in the process, but I think that he can play pretty well right away at the NBA global, at the NBA scale, like either spot minutes in the NBA or G League minutes, rehabbing to get ready to play not rehabbing, but like preparing to play in the NBA. So I think that it'll come over like right now. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think he's going to do. So I don't think that he specifically is a draft and stash guy. And also, like, for this specific season, this specific draft, I don't think that that's like a feasible route for the Thunder, given that you aren't going to be out of this quote unquote mess anytime soon. That's obviously not a mess at all. And as Sam Presti wisely said, it's like having too much money at a store. That's never going to be a problem. But like the roster crunch stuff, that's never going to fall off. Like, that's going to keep going every offseason from now on. That's why this roster will turn over and get more and more and more and more and more competitive, because you're always going to have an ability to improve it because of all the draft picks that you have. So to do a draft and stash right the second would just kind of be not great in the first round. Now with pick 34 or 36, would you go get somebody like that? Sure, like a draft and stash guy, but like in terms of the first round, I don't think so. At Alex, and especially, by the way, if post-lottery the same thing happens as a coin flip where the Thunder will improve their second-round pick to where they have 2 picks in the 30s, and that takes you out of signing a guy to a 2-way deal, at that point, draft and stash becomes really likely for that second-round pick, because you're high enough to go get somebody who you still believe in that is a draft and stash candidate, while also not low enough to get somebody that you can put on a 2-way deal. And so in order to avoid creating another roster spot this year, you can do that in that scope. So if that's what you mean of like second-round guys, then sure. But I don't think that they'll do that with their first-round pick. And I think that James Nagy will be a good enough player to come over right now for him specifically of what you're asking. Alex _ Boljack, time. Who are 3 candidates to be off the team by the trade deadline next season? And what specific metrics would they need to change in order to stay on the roster? Yeah, the three candidates that you look at right now, let's discard Sarge because we don't even know if he'll be on the roster come media day in the sense of like he's not under contract. The guys under contract currently that could be gone by trade deadline. So from this point moving forward, any old time now moving forward, those guys I think are Lindy Waters, Trey Mann, Jeremiah Robinson. I think that those are the guys where like they could just be gone at the come trade deadline with a teeny bit pinched in there of Poku, but I think that Poku showed in the limited action that he got to play this year that he's worth taking another look at next year. The only reason that I put Poku in there is because typically speaking, Sam Presti does not let guys hit restricted free agency. And I'm not sure that they're going to work out an extension this offseason. So at the deadline at that point, you make a decision typically for Sam Presti. However, this is a special case with Poku because of the lack of data points. I know that at 22 years old, it feels like we've been watching him forever. But if you really think about it, the first year that we watched him was in empty gyms where he was drafted in November, played in December, and on draft night, some of the best international scouts in the world were saying he's 2 years away from being 2 years away. There was legitimate questions from legitimately plugged-in people of if he would even come over to the NBA that season. And the Thunder said, no, bring him over right now. We want him right now. And the Thunder just kind of let it ride in that first season. So that's not even truly data points necessarily, like in terms of like decision-making for the long term. Second year, a shortened off season, and we all know what comes with that. And then the next couple of years past that. So like what I'm saying is, even though it feels like he's been here forever and he has logged technically a lot of minutes, like in the raw, just total minutes, because he played so much his first couple of years, this was the year where you were expecting to see an improvement. And if you go back to training camp, Mark said, like, whenever you guys see him, you're going to think that an alien dropped this guy down and he's completely different from when you last saw him. And that was true until he got hurt. So we did see the improvement that you wanted to see. He was pacing properly until the injury. So I think that they're going to give him another shot to do so this season. And then the special case would be, even though he's up against restricted free agency, you just let it ride and make your decision after you've accumulated more information whenever he's a legitimate, comfortable player. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what Poku does. So I'm not going to put him in the top three. I'll put, Waters, Trey Mann, and Jeremiah Robinson as like the big three who are really in danger of roster spots for the immediate future. Next question going to come from MK325491. Who's the best draft prospects for OKC with a 12th pick in your opinion? This is a lot harder than like what it has been in years past, because like in years past you're guessing at like, okay, what 5 guys will fall? What two guys will fall down? So like you're kind of a lot closer to the target range of now we're trying to see who will fall past the 11, the first 11 picks, which is harder to gauge than like 1, for the Chet Holmgren draft and 5 for the Josh Giddey draft. But at 12, if Grady Dick falls, I love Grady Dick. If Jerice Walker is in the range where you can move up for him, I love that too. Taylor Hendricks, I love him as well. So there are some interesting names in this draft, and the bottom line is someone has to fall. Like if I just said one of those names, you said, oh, there's no way they're there. No way that Jerice Walker falls. No way that Grady Dick falls. No way that Taylor Hendricks falls. Well, somebody has to. So then, that pushes somebody down to 12 that you really like. I think that this is the draft class where it's just fascinating. Like Jordan Hawkins, I really like him as a prospect. I would be, stunned if you told me that the Thunder loved him. But I like him. I think he's a good prospect. So like that's the thing. Like all these guys, Kason Wallace, like Jet Howard, like these guys that like people really like in that range and can fluctuate between 12 and 15 and 10 to 12 or whatever. Like none of these guys scream Thunder besides Ron Repair. And so if he's not there, or if we're wrong on assuming that the Thunder like him, they're going to draft someone that we don't think right now that they like. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But for me personally, it would be a dream come true if Grady Dick or Walker or Hendricks fell. We're also going to ask the next question from @the_Hansard. What's your dad's overall rating for the season and his top 3 players or wins of the season? So for those of you that don't know, on Twitter, my dad started watching the Thunder, and he would like call me and tell me these random things about basketball that people found very entertaining, from him not liking that nowadays that your home team's not always wearing white, all the way up to his fascination with J-Dub, which is a common practice among Thunder fans. So this season it was a lot of fun for him. He got back into it after not really watching for the last really like 5 or 6 years. He hasn't really paid attention to the NBA. So he got back into it. He liked it. He thought the team was very fun and competitive. He likes the way that they play. He loves Mark, loves them to death, which so do I. So, credit to my dad there for being smart for once. Best 3 wins of the season. I forgot to ask him this, I'll be honest with you, but I'll tell you this. The wins he called me after, I would assume, were his favorite wins. So that was the Pelicans play-in game. Thought it was incredible. That was the Boston game where they showed a lot of quote-unquote moxie, according to him. And then after that, he called me after that John Morant game because he didn't understand what happened. So I wouldn't say that's like his favorite win, but like he did call me after that game. So we'll go with those ones for the time being for himself. And then another question from @House of Wigs, who I believe got a shout out from Aaron Wiggins today. So congratulations, House of Wigs. Best draft prospect fit wise. They're going to say Ryan Repair. I think that people are a little bit underestimating Grady Dick, and I think that he like truly does fit what the Thunder wanted to do. And he did not grade out as a bad defender in college. In fact, he graded out as a pretty good defender according to Synergy in college. And he has the framework to be a good defender. He has the motor to be a good defender. And you have a defensive staff that can really help him improve defensively, and a team around him where he's not going to be on the first, second, third, or fourth option on the floor. So I really enjoy what Grady Dick can provide this team. Will he fall to 12? We'll see. We'll have more questions all coming up, including about the big picture. Should OKC make an all-in move? But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM, folks. The Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Go to the website right now, probasketballgm.com, or the App Store to get the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. You get a 100% free boost to start your franchise using the code LOCKEDON in the game store, and you're going to need it because it's very difficult. You're building a franchise from literally the ground up, and you're trying to win a championship. I want to give a huge shout-out to Locked On Bulls host Pat the Designer and Locked On Mavs host Nick Angstead, who's also my boss, so got to get him in there too, Pat. They both won 4 championships and won our internal competition. We all play the game. We all love the game. We all got addicted to the game. We're all still playing the game. But like for the time limit we put on it, they won 4 championships. They are the winners of the competition. They're going to get a little prize pack. So I couldn't win a title. So maybe you can win a championship and prove to me that you're a better GM than I am. I couldn't win a championship. I got close. No cigar. My core made it there one time. Failed in dramatic fashion in Game 7. I'm still hurt by it. Made it to a couple Western Conference Finals, and that was kind of all there was to it. So see if you can do better at Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. That's probasketballgm.com or the App Store, Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. You can even scan the little code right there on YouTube to download the app. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Locked On Thunder podcast. Folks, it's awesome to have you here. This week starts our annual player profile and projections for NBA draft prospects. Very fun to run through their strengths, their weaknesses, how they fit with OKC, to answer all these fit questions. We're going to go prospect by prospect, answering all these questions about the fits with the Thunder. So it's going to be a lot of fun. for those of us who enjoy the draft. So I hope that you're going to stay tuned and subscribed. We'll also talk with Mavs Draft on Twitter, Richard Stayman, and MavsDraft.com, and Locked In NBA Big Board later on this week about the NBA draft as well. A lot of good stuff coming up. Including your questions. So at Brother Reed 11, what happens first? Does Mark win Coach of the Year or the Thunder make the Western Conference Finals? Both at the same time. So like the reason I say that is typically I think that the way these awards go is, you get that one surge and you kind of already had your punch, right? So Mark had the punch this year. He just so happened to run up against the best story in the NBA of the Sacramento Kings, or else I think he would have won the award had Mike Brown not done what Mike Brown did. So, like, the novelty will have worn off already by next round. There's going to be another surprise team. There's going to be another surprise coach. There's going to be another, great story to where I don't think he'll win it next year, or anything like that. But the next time that this team wins like 50-plus games and they're truly a title contender and they are going to go for a championship type of run and they pull that off in the regular season, then I think that's whenever he's going to get his flowers for like winning the actual award. And so I'll say both, but I would say it would be most likely that the Thunder make it to the Western Conference Finals first because it's a regular season award. And so like when are they going to officially give you the award? Kind of messes with that timeline. So I'll say technically speaking, the Thunder will get there before he gets the honor because it'll be tough to gauge by the regular season. At 123 OKC 321. Great at name. Possibility of trading up for Grady Dick and or if they prefer wing or big man. So just possibility of trading up. Again, I know what Sam said. I was there in the room, but I think that there's a strong possibility that you evaluate it because of how topsy-turvy that this draft is. I think that the draft, outside of the guy, like outside of Victor, I think that the draft is razor thin. I have Victor and Scoot as a clear 1-2, but we've already seen reports from like literally Woj that teams have Brandon Miller too. So like 2 through 12, you're going to see guys flip-flop spots on all 30 boards. Like there's not going to be 2 boards the same, I don't think, in these 30 war rooms of who should be where. And there's going to be some decisions. Like I would bet you that there's going to be a board that has Thompson, like one of the Thompson twins, like 8 or 9. And there's going to be boards that have them 4 and 5 within the NBA. And so with that kind of uncertainty means that one of the guys that Sam Presti might have incredibly highly graded, like he might have a surprise guy at 4 that like we don't think is 4, but like he does. And if that guy's there at 8 or 7, you have an embarrassment of riches, or 9, wherever, you have an embarrassment of riches to go move up, with. So, and get a load of this, like the important wrinkle to remember in trading for draft picks is you've got to be able to deliver them their guy. So the likelihood that you can deliver somebody their guy while you get your guy in this draft is higher than most because of how razor thin the talent edges are, and because of how not polarizing, but like the word I'm looking to describe the fact that we might just see things differently this year than more. It's a less consensus board even around NBA circles. So trading up, I think, is still very much on the table, even though the whole paint and house comment, so it's going to be interesting to see for sure. At Jimmy Mintz, if the Thunder trade for OG and Anunoby, can they use their cap space to give him more money in the last year of his deal in conjunction with an extension? Also, if you do trade Dort and draft picks for OG, how many extra wins do you think that gives OKC? I'm not really understanding the question in the sense of like the cap space one. You can ask, I'll tell you, a good person to ask about cap space stuff is Keith Smith. His email's in his bio. He replies to every email. He's great. But like, yes, I think that they could trade for him and then sign him to a new deal, and make sure that they extend him. They'd have to do that to trade for a guy on an expiring contract with what it would take to get him. But I think that trading Lou Dort does a lot on and off the court. Lou Dort is one of the leaders of the team and a guy that they rally around and a guy that they care about and a guy that's their friend and a guy that raises the intensity level and helps your defense and just a guy that the organization, top to bottom, really, really love. And trading him and picks, an extra of picks, and tying up money that you're going to need in the future for OG, who, as you mentioned, like it's not that OG gives you plus 20 in the win column or plus 10 or even plus 8 in the win column, like by himself. So, the trade-off there, you lose a lot to gain OG. And it's also a player who there's been reports of doesn't love his role in Toronto, doesn't love being the second, third, fourth, fifth guy. He comes to a more talent-rich team. His touches are not going to improve. They might go down. They might go down in touches. So like it's not exactly a perfect marriage for any way you slice it. And I think that, not to say you're doing this, Jimmy, but I think that a lot of times we view this in the scope of 2K ratings. Like, well, in my mind, OG's an 85 and Lu Dort's a 72. OG is clearly better. Just do whatever you got to do to get a better player. There's all these other wrinkles to it that there's not wrinkles in these kind of spreadsheets and video games and everything else that you come up with on these fake trades. So I think that this is a trade that should die in the offseason. Remember, it should die in the trade deadline. Remember the trade deadline? Everyone was running wild because there's a mystery team for OG Anunoby. Who's the mystery team? The mystery team could get him. Toronto's looking at a mystery team. And nothing came of it. And everyone said the Thunder are the mystery team. I just know it. They weren't. They weren't the mystery team. I just know they're the mystery team. They weren't. And they didn't trade for him. And nobody traded for him. Like, it's just not a great fit. Now, I could be totally wrong, but like just from laying everything out there and saying it all out loud, it doesn't seem like a very good idea. Because you would have to trade Dort. Like you couldn't do the trade without trading Dort in terms of like salaries and, picks and everything else that goes with it. And would Toronto take that? Would the Thunder take that? Like, I just don't think that it's going to work out. My friend at Crane NBA, when are you doing karaoke again? If you want to listen to me sing because of Nick Crane, who bet me in Salt Lake City at All-Star Weekend, the Thunder make the play and I got to sing on the show. You can go on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. I'll tell you what, if the Thunder on lottery night, and this is why you need to watch our Locked In NBA live stream lottery night. If the Thunder on lottery night jump up, and I'll even amend the tweet, because I did put my reply to this already. If they jump up to the top 4, which is an even greater chance of happening than just for Victor. If the Thunder get to the top 4, I will then sing a cappella, because it's copyrights, obviously, both parts to Kid Rock's Picture with Sheryl Crow. So I'll sing Kid Rock's part, I'll sing Sheryl Crow's part. I'll change the voice inflection for each of them to be appropriate. So if rooting for the Thunder's draft pick to elevate was not enough, you can root for that as well. One question real quickly over at YouTube from Francisco Portales. I hope I said that right. I apologize, Francisco. Hey, Ron, long-time listener of the pod. Love the pod. After seeing Building Block Baisley get pitchforked off the team at the trade deadline, who is the one player on the current roster that you could see that in the exact same position this upcoming season? So I'm going to take this in a literal comparison to Baisley of like, the fan base doesn't like him anymore. He gets ridiculed for everything that he does, and it's just time for his tenure to end. I think it could be Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, because I don't think that the fan base is going to get mad at Trey Mann. They'll just say, well, he's still not shooting the ball well, and so you need to shoot the ball better. And Lindy Waters, the fan base loves. And so even though I love Jeremiah Robinson-Earl as a person and as like and talking to him and everything else, and I think that he can be a really good player, and Mavs draft during his draft class had JRE at number 12 on his big board, and he showed a lot of stuff his rookie year, and so he could have a year 3 bounce back. So could Trey Mann, so could any of these guys. I think that people will get really tired of Jeremiah Robinson-Earl if he's not playing better next year because of the way it looks. Like with Trey Mann, his mistakes look good, like the step back to create space and the shot doesn't go in looks good, up until the point where the shot doesn't go in. With Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, the mistakes are a bit louder for Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, as the mistakes were louder for Darius Baisley. And so those loud mistakes, I think, is what gets fan bases to set their ire or turn their ire, is that the right expression, to a player more so than like what actually happened. It's just like how loud it is and how much you can tell it pop off the screen. So that's why I would pick Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that all these guys become incredible players, but like Jeremiah Robinson-Earl would be the next in line. But hopefully he can change the fate and have a different fate than what Darius Baisley did. So we're here for you 5 days a week, even in the off season. So subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts from. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.